France destroys their cars before living mines in Burkina Faso.
Oui, c'est ça que moi, c'est que je te disais là, non? C'est ce que je te disais, non?
But 2015, Putin pulls Biden aside and said, by the way, we're not going to let you have your insurgents, the good ones, take over Damascus. We're going to support Bashar al-Assad. Why? Because he asked us to. That turned it. No longer could the U.S. exert supremacy over everything. And the Russians faced us down there. We lost. Bashar al-Assad's still there. And we're not very long for this world, those 1,000 or so troops that we have up there stealing the oil in the northern part of Syria. So, long story short, we thought we were exceptional. We knew we were in 1991. After that, when Putin came into power 10 years after, and you start rebuilding the Russian economy, and the Russian military services reached out to the West and said, hey, we're happy to join NATO if you'd like. And they said, oh, are you kidding me? How are we going to sell arms if you're a part of NATO? We need an enemy, please. Be patient and be an enemy. It was, it's really kind of a sad story, but Americans are not aware of this. Americans think that it all started when Putin seized Crimea. They don't know the history of how the coup happened and how it caused that, and how eventually the threatening of Russian strategic weaponry right on the border there, what John Mearsheimer calls the bulwark against Russia that NATO was building, had to fall. And that had to fall because Putin finally concluded that there's no way talking to these people. We have to go in and take care of our countrymen in the Donbass and then get rid of the Nazis and destroy the army. And they're well on their way to achieving all those objectives.
Larry, don't the people that run the government understand the economic prosperity that has come about in Russia since the presidency of Vladimir Putin? And don't they understand his moral compulsion to defend himself from the radical encroachments of NATO? And why do they hate him, Larry?
So the hatred doesn't start off immediately. When Putin comes into office and in 2001 starts cracking down on the oligarchs. And remember, those oligarchs in Russia were partnered up with oligarchs in America. So there were American business corporate interests and individual interests who were hoping to reap lots, billions of dollars out of Russia. Putin put a stop to that. So in 2008, when he starts to push back on this concept of incorporating Ukraine and Georgia into NATO, that is where you can go back and search year by year the press coverage. That's where the worm starts to turn, where the final break came with the Sochi Olympics that coincided not only with a lot of attention on the anti-LGBTQ views of Russia, but on top of that, as Ray noted, Russia's intervention on behalf of President Bashar al-Assad in Syria to counter what was a U.S.-British effort to fund Islamic radicals, some of the very terrorist groups we claimed that we'd been fighting the previous 12 years. Now we were arming, and those arms were coming out of a place called Benghazi in Libya. And as soon as Putin intervened to save the government of Syria, to save the Syrian army, that's where the thing turned 180 degrees. It was full on hate Putin. Putin is weak. Putin is sick. The same messages we're hearing today, they started launching those, and that culminated with the coup in the Maidan and the taking down a president that was seen as too favorable to Russia and installing a president that was going to be subservient to the West.
Is Vladimir Putin as stable in office today, as popular a president of Russia as he was before the war started?
As far as I can see, the answer is yes. Now, the caveat here is this fellow Prigozhin. The way Putin has handled that, given Prigozhin's great popularity in Russia, has, in my view, been rather artful. Prigozhin even showed up at this big to-do they had with leaders this past few days. So he's been co-opted. I think he's been pretty much made harmless, but the caveat there is that he does represent, in my view, a view that one would expect in these circumstances. There are generals and there are people saying, Vladimir Vladimirovich, why don't you get this damn thing over? You got the forces to do it. For God's sake, knock that little twerp out in Kiev and go ahead forward, you know. So I think he does have that to contend with. And I do think now, as I look on the Prigozhin affair, that this was part of it, that this was indeed Prigozhin thinking that these people who hold that view might have come to help him rather than salute to Shoigu and Putin and when push came to shove.